Ukraine with an implicit security arrangement while addressing Trump's concerns that the U.S. has provided Kiev with a blank check. We're doing like genuine 18th, I guess 19th century mercantile colonialism right here. This is just straight up, we will continue to supply you with weapons and we will, in return, extract wealth from your country through our private companies. But what private companies would be willing to do work in this area? Just one missile strike from Russia could cost tens of millions of dollars, not to mention the people that it would kill. This agreement signals clearly to Russia that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term, said Scott Bessent in a statement. President Trump envisioned this partnership between the American people and the Ukrainian people to show both sides' commitment to lasting peace and prosperity. And to be clear, no state or person who financed or supplied the Russian war machine will be allowed to benefit from the reconstruction of Ukraine. I can't believe it. I think there's a very real possibility that Putin spurning Trump got Trump angry enough at Putin that he was willing to publicly back an actual security agreement for Ukraine. Because Ukraine would not agree to this unless there were some meaningful security provisions. Ukraine doesn't even have an incentive to. Because Ukraine's been getting, and has been getting promises for, more weaponry from Europe. Ukraine wouldn't just accept this unless they got something from it. But these security agreements imply that we would be willing not only to give Ukraine weapons, but provide security or ensure security in regions that we're extracting wealth from. Does anyone else, do you guys agree with me that this is like actually potentially kind of huge and also concerning? Like, I'm pro-Ukraine, but if the implication here is we would be providing security, that could be World War III, so I don't think that's going to happen. But I also don't know what we could be offering Ukraine that would allow them to provide meaningful security. How do you securely extract resources from a war zone? You can fire missiles hundreds of miles now. It's not like if you keep the fighting back 50 miles, you're fine. We're not just talking about artillery fire. You can strike anywhere in the world, basically from anywhere in the world. Like it used to be you could do economic extraction in a war zone because as long as the fighting was somewhere else, you were fine. It's not like that anymore. Why wouldn't Russia just fire missiles at any refineries, mines, anything like that we built? They could do it effortlessly. It's not like any of those locations are secret. It would be known because there would be private investment in the region. It'd be easy to see on satellites. And what's more, it can't move. They would be stationary because we'd fire it back. Who's we? American soldiers? And if by we you mean Ukraine, they're already firing back. I don't know, maybe the US gives Ukraine tons of advanced military hardware. Okay, I'm thinking possibilities here. I'm thinking what it could mean. Possibility number one, American military escorts for economic extraction. Not likely. That's crazy. That's insane. Number two, post-war extraction. That is to say, the economic extraction will only take place after the war ends. Questions here. When the hell will the war end? What provisions would have to be made in the meantime to ensure that these areas wouldn't be under Russian control when the war ends? Does that mean we would just continue to provide Ukraine weapons as usual? Did the MIC broker this contract because they wanted to have some kind of on-paper pretext for continuing to supply Ukraine, and they get to double dip because afterwards they get proceeds from the security arrangements that need to be provided in order to facilitate the extraction of those resources? But a follow-up question to that, do these people think the war is ever going to end to the point where you can extract resources from the area? Even if the war officially ends, it's Russia, right? We're talking like a massive demilitarized zone. People are still going to get hurt on both sides of the border all the time unless Russia is decisively beaten, which seems like at this point not very likely. Additionally, are we sending mercenaries in? Are we talking like Blackwater shit? Like, are we, because there is one way we could meaningfully push back on Russia, and that would be like real mercenary involvement with modern American weapons. That could do a lot, especially if they were doing like covert operations behind the scenes, you know? Honestly, Russian logistics are so bad that a group of highly trained American like veteran mercenaries could probably be airdropped in the Donbass and just start killing. Like, I've heard, I don't know how much of it is conjecture, but my understanding is that the average Russian on the front lines right now is like a 19-year-old just like desperate, not desperado, sorry, like a desperate 19-year-old conscript, or like somebody who's only there to make a little bit of money because they couldn't otherwise like afford shit. Despacito, exactly. 60-year-old? My understanding is that the average soldier that Russia is sending to the front lines right now is not especially competent. And I don't think their military leaders are either. We saw what happened at the beginning of the war. So genuinely, if they just dropped a bunch of mercenaries on the back end and they started like running around, like killing persons of interest, you know, Russian officers, they could probably do that. PMCs have been champing at the bit to do things. Yeah, that's true. And for the most part, we haven't really been letting them do that because a private military corporation, mercenaries, can't really do that much without the American military industrial complex's backing, because that's where they get their resources. And also it's difficult and blah, 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 blah. BlackRock founder Eric Prince had floated the idea. I think you mean Blackwater. Blackwater founder Eric Prince had plans to create a $10 billion private army in Ukraine. Yeah, they love this shit because it's literally a PvP zone for them. Like it's free real estate. So it seems to me like the possibilities here are the security agreement might be deferred with weapon payments in the meantime, but if that's the case, that opens up a bunch of other questions. It could mean American military involvement, which would be insane. It could mean mercenary involvement, which is less insane, but also really wacky. If we started authorizing and supplying Western mercenary companies in East Ukraine, that would be good television. I'll cover my bases and I'll speak broadly. I think that would be good television. It would also be insane, but it would be less insane than if our soldiers were there. The only other thing that I can think of is that we start giving Ukraine access to like the real shit, you know? Remember how much work they got done with the HIMARS rockets? They only had them for like, they only had like a small stock of them for a few months. And with them, they were able to strike so many, the ATACMS, yeah. They were able to strike refineries and positions like logistics centers way hundreds of miles back. And we could do it. I mean, we've got plenty of weapons. I don't think we have that many of the rockets, but we could build more, or something comparable. God only knows what the fuck we have in our storage. Our back shed, you know? Gonna give them the goddamn neutron bombs or something. I don't know, dude. This is crazy. The MIC definitely wants us to continue supplying stuff in Ukraine. You know what the MIC definitely wants? They want in Ukraine what we did in Israel. Israel isn't just a place we send weapons to. Israel is a place we test weapons in. Their AI-based surveillance systems, their AI drone missile targeting strike systems, their automatic gun turrets that fire on people without human supervision, their weapons, it's a testing ground for us. Israel writes down what happens. Our companies take note. So I guarantee you that because Ukraine is a much larger scale conflict, they would love it if Ukrainians got their hands on some modern, or at least somewhat modern stuff, because then they could get some interesting data. Yeah, Israel probably gives shitty data because when they write down what the bomb did, they're like writing down really racist epithets towards Palestinians rather than any actual data. It's like how we can't use Nazi military or medical data because the people writing it down were so racist and anti-Semitic that they forgot to write down like numbers and do control studies and stuff, you know? People are like, well, at least we learned interesting stuff from the Holocaust medical experiments. We really didn't. They really did not. We really didn't learn anything from that. They were just crazy. Does anyone else have, like, I'm kind of like, the reason I'm stalling a bit on this is because I'm looking for any information from chat that might, I don't know, help me develop a thought on this. This just seems insane to me. I never expected Ukraine to go with this, especially because it seems like there's no way we could provide security agreements that would make any difference without massive commitment of arms or soldiers. I don't know. Surely reconstruction just means after the war, right? Yeah, but we're giving Ukraine weapons in the meantime, which means we're expecting a payout, which means we want that land, which means Russia can't have it, which means we want Ukraine to win. But we've been giving weapons to Ukraine, and Ukraine hasn't won. So we got to do something. If we want that land so we can get trillions of dollars in extractive resources afterwards, we need to do something to secure that land, right? We need the land so we can colonize it. What can we do?